You brought nothing but sorrow into my life, Zina screamed, flinging the door open. Her voice trembled with rage. You are a cursed child, Dora, a curse I should have never carried. Welcome to Tales by Steph, a home of interesting African stories. The early morning mist still clung to the roofs of Umuezike village when Zina stormed out of her mother's compound, her slippers slapping hard against the red earth. Her hands trembled, and her face was twisted in rage and disgust. Behind her, the wailing of a child tore through the silence. "Mama! Mama!" the little girl screamed. But Zina didn't turn back. She had made up her mind. Today, she would cut ties with the one thing that had ruined her life. 5-year-old Dora stood barefoot, snot dripping from her nose, her tiny hands gripping the edge of her faded wrapper. Her eyes, wide, deep, and too knowing for a child, followed her mother with quiet understanding. She didn't cry for long. She simply watched. And as the villagers passed by, pretending not to hear, some shivered when her gaze met theirs. "She's not normal," someone whispered. "She sees things," another added. "That one is not an ordinary child." It hadn't always been this way. Zina had been the most beautiful girl in Umuezike. Light-skinned, with a curvy body and long, thick hair, she had dreams bigger than the hills that surrounded the village. She wanted a life of comfort, of wealth, of everything her mother never had. At 17, she was already known as the girl who would marry a rich man and escape the mud houses and the farm tools. Men flocked around her like bees to honey. Her laugh was a weapon, her smile a spell. But for all her beauty, Zina carried a dark secret. Every relationship she touched crumbled like dry leaves. Every man who promised her the world disappeared or lost everything. Still, she pressed on. Then came Tony, handsome, rich, and based in Lagos. He was everything she wanted. When she found out she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. This would seal the deal. But as the pregnancy grew, Tony changed. He stopped picking her calls. Eventually, he sent money for an abortion and blocked her. Zina refused. "I don't need him. I'll raise my child. The child will be my blessing." But the moment Dora was born, Zina's life began to fall apart. Her thriving mini boutique caught fire. Her best friend accused her of stealing money. Her father, a healthy man, dropped dead one morning. The villagers whispered, "That child brought sorrow." Even Zina's mother, Mama Nkechi, began praying more often, her voice shaking as she recited Psalm 91 over Dora every night. "Zina, this girl, she's different," Mama Nkechi said one night, her voice low. "She talks to things that aren't there. She knows things she shouldn't." "She's a child," Zina snapped. "You people are the problem, always afraid of what you don't understand." But deep inside, Zina was afraid too. Dora never cried like other babies. She stared, too long, too deep. She once told Zina, at only 3 years old, "Mama, a tall man is sitting on your chest when you sleep. He wears a red hat and he is angry with you." Zina didn't sleep for days after that. The final straw came a year later. Zina had finally gotten another chance at love. A wealthy widower from Owerri who ran a chain of electronic shops. He visited the village for a burial, met Zina, and was instantly smitten. Everything was going well until he asked about Dora. "She's my daughter," Zina said, trying to smile. "A child out of wedlock?" He frowned. "Where is the father?" "He died," Zina lied quickly. But when he saw Dora, the man took a step back. Dora had just come out of the house, her dress dirty, her eyes locked on him. "She said your face is like a broken mirror," Zina recalled Dora telling him. He left that same day and never called again. That night, Zina screamed at Dora, slapped her, dragged her outside, and locked her out. "You are cursed! You ruined everything for me!" Dora didn't cry. She just sat by the doorstep, whispering to herself, eyes wide open until dawn. So now, Zina had decided, Enough. "Mama and Kechi, take your granddaughter," Zina shouted that morning. "I don't want her again. Let her stay here and grow with goats and spirits. I'm done." "You're her mother," Mama and Kechi cried. "You can't abandon her like this." "She is no daughter of mine," Zina hissed. "She's bad luck." She packed her bags and took the first bus to Lagos, where her friend had promised to introduce her to a businessman. She left no number, no address, just the echo of her daughter's wail and a village that knew what had just happened but would never speak of it. Zina arrived in Lagos with nothing but her beauty, charm, and burning ambition. She renamed herself Zizi and began working at a luxury boutique in Victoria Island, where she met powerful men daily. One afternoon, Chief Udoka walked in, a wealthy widower in his late 50s, known for his chains of businesses and political connections. Zina served him with her signature smile and playful confidence. He was captivated. Over the next few weeks, Udoka returned frequently, claiming it was for advice on gifts for his clients. But everyone could see he was drawn to Zina. She played her cards well, submissive, mysterious, elegant. He loved that she never asked too many questions. Soon he invited her to a private dinner. Then came vacations, expensive gifts, whispers of marriage. Within a year, he proposed. Their wedding was grand, the kind that made headlines. Zina moved into his luxurious Banana Island mansion, flaunted designer dresses, and posted photos of her fairy tale life. But behind her smiles, a shadow followed. The more she tried to bury her past, the louder Dora's voice echoed in her head, "Mama." And the night after the wedding, the mirror in their bedroom cracked, without anyone touching it. Back in the village, Dora changed. She became quieter, stranger. At night, Mama and Kechi would hear her singing to herself. Sometimes she would see Dora standing in the compound at 2 a.m., eyes lifted to the moon, murmuring in a language no one taught her. And when chickens disappeared or someone fell sick, it was Dora they blamed. She's the cause. Zina left her for a reason. But no one dared touch her, because any insult thrown at Dora was returned, with interest. One man called her Ogbanje to her face. That week he lost his entire yam barn to fire. Still, Dora never spoke in anger. She just watched. One evening, Mama Nkechi sat Dora down. "Do you know why your mother left?" Dora nodded. "Because I'm bad luck." "No," the old woman said firmly, "because she was afraid of your gift. But gifts, my daughter, are not always curses. You are meant for something big. I won't live forever, but when I'm gone, you must follow the dreams." "What dreams?" "You'll know. They'll come. The spirits don't forget." That night, Dora had her first dream. She stood on the edge of a cliff, the world beneath her feet. Her mother was falling, sinking in a black river. Dora reached out, but a voice said, "Let her fall." She made her choice, but yours is yet to come. As Dora lay on her raffia mat staring into the darkness, a chill wind passed through the room, carrying the scent of rain. And something else. Something old. Something waiting. And far away in the city, in a mansion filled with gold and glass, Zina jolted awake from her sleep, heart pounding. For the first time in years, she heard a voice she thought she'd buried forever. "Mama!" Zina sat upright in bed, her silk nightgown clinging to her sweat-soaked skin. The room was quiet, but her heart thundered in her chest like a drum beaten by unseen hands. She turned on the bedside lamp. A soft golden light spilled into the room, chasing away the shadows. But even then, the corners of the room seemed darker than they should be, as if something was hiding there, just beyond reach. She glanced at the time. 3:03 a.m., the exact time Dora was born. "No, no," Zina muttered, pressing her hands to her ears. "It's just a dream, just a stupid dream." But the air had changed. The scent of her perfume, usually sweet and floral, was gone, replaced by something damp, like river water and wet earth. Zina stood and walked toward the balcony. She parted the heavy velvet curtains and stepped outside. Lagos was still and sleepy beneath her, the city lights blinking like tired eyes. But in her compound, the motion sensor lights were flickering, on and off, on and off. Then she saw it, a small figure standing near the garden, right under the mango tree. Zina's breath caught in her throat. The child didn't move, didn't speak, but something about the shape, the stillness, the size. It looked like Dora. She blinked. Gone. She stumbled back into her room, locked the doors, and reached for her phone. Hands shaking, she dialed her friend, Amara. "Zina?" Amara mumbled groggily. I think I'm going mad," Zina whispered. I think I saw Dora." A long pause, then a sharp inhale. "You mean your daughter? From the village?" Zina swallowed hard. "She called me. I heard her voice, and she was here, in the garden. I saw her." Amara was quiet for a long time. Then she said something Zina wasn't expecting. "Zina, you need to see a prophet, immediately." Zina scoffed. "A prophet? Amara, I'm not cursed, I'm just tired." But deep down, fear clutched her throat. That night, she barely slept. The next morning, as she stepped into her lavish bathroom, the mirror shattered on its own, slicing her cheek. Blood dripped into the sink like a warning. Shaken, she agreed to visit the prophet. When they arrived at the prayer house, the old man didn't even let her speak. He looked at Zina and said, "You left your covering in the village. The child you abandoned was not the curse. She was your shield. And now, the spirits are coming." Zina froze, her knees trembling. "What do you mean?" she whispered, but the prophet had already closed his eyes, humming an eerie chant. Suddenly, the candles around the prayer room flickered violently. "You broke a covenant," he said. "The spirits want balance." Zina bolted out, heart racing, refusing to believe. Back home, every mirror reflected Dora's eyes. Her food turned bitter. Shadows moved when no one was there. That night, she packed her bags, called a private jet, and fled to Dubai, thinking distance could save her. But at 3:03 a.m., in her luxury suite, she heard it again. "Mama!" Zina jumped from the hotel bed, heart slamming against her ribs. The suite was silent, yet Dora's voice echoed in her ears like it had been whispered right beside her. "Mama," it said again, softer this time, sadder. She turned on every light, checked every room, opened every curtain. Nothing. No one. But the air had changed, cold, heavy, and thick with the scent of wet earth. Shaking, she called the hotel receptionist, demanding a change of room. An hour later, she was escorted to another floor. She barely slept, clutching her Bible and muttering prayers she hadn't said in years. The next morning, she found scratch marks on the wall of her new room, tiny fingerprints etched into the marble, like a child had clawed at it. The cleaning staff insisted it hadn't been there the night before. That evening, her phone lit up with an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello?" she whispered. A pause. Then a child's voice, soft and deliberate. "I'm coming, Mama." Zina screamed and flung the phone across the room. It shattered. She dropped to her knees, finally crying, because deep in her soul she knew. No place on earth was far enough to escape Dora. Back in Lagos, Zina's husband, Chief Udoka, had grown cold and distant. He barely spoke to her during their last phone call. Something was wrong. His staff reported he hadn't left his private study in days. When his driver forced the door open, they found Udoka sitting stiffly in his chair, eyes wide, murmuring one word repeatedly. "Dora! Dora! Dora!" His phones were dead, and strange symbols had appeared on the walls, drawn in chalky white lines. No one knew what they meant, All they knew was, since Zina left, the house had gone silent. When Zina returned to Lagos after fleeing Dubai, everything felt different. The city was still bustling, the air still heavy with fuel fumes and ambition, but to her, the world seemed dimmer. Like a layer of shadow had settled over her life, following her, breathing down her neck. She arrived at her mansion in Banana Island late in the evening. Her driver opened the gate, but no one came to greet her. Usually, staff would rush to collect her bags to ask if she needed anything. Now, the compound was eerily silent. "Where's everybody?" she asked the driver. He shrugged. "Madam, since you travel, Olga no dey talk to anybody. Housekeeper say he no dey come out of him room." Zina frowned. "And you didn't call me?" The driver lowered his gaze. "We try, madam, but your number, he no dey go through." Her blood ran cold. She had used that same number in Dubai. Why hadn't it worked? Inside the house, the air was thick, still, like a tomb. Her heels echoed through the marbled floors as she walked toward Chief Udoka's private study. The door was shut. She knocked. Silence. She turned the knob. Locked. "Udoka?" she called. "It's me, Zina. I'm back." Nothing. She pounded on the door. "Open the door, Udoka! What's going on?" Suddenly, from the other side, a soft, rustling sound. Then a voice, low, hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "She's here. She's here." Zina froze. The voice repeated louder this time. "Dora is here." Her heart dropped. She stepped back, trembling. "Udoka, what did you just say?" But there was no response, only silence. That night, Zina couldn't sleep. She sat in her room, clutching her pillow, watching the walls as they shifted with shadows. Dora's voice echoed in her head, that prophet's words repeated like a curse. "You left your covering in the village. The child you abandoned was not the curse. She was your shield." Zina poured herself a drink, hands shaking. Then, crack. The wine glass shattered in her grip, slicing into her palm. Blood dripped onto the white rug, forming a pattern. She blinked. A number was forming. 2, the second number. The second day. The next morning, she went back to the prophet's shrine. This time, he didn't chant. He didn't light candles. He simply stared at her with pity. "I told you they are coming." "Who are they?" she asked, desperate. "Who is after me?" He leaned in. "You made a deal you don't remember. You asked for beauty, power, and riches. You promised the river a sacrifice, the first fruit of your womb." Zina gasped. "No, I never—" "You did," he said. "But when the child was born, you fled. You left her, abandoned the covenant. Now they have come to collect. You are living on borrowed time." She began to cry. "What do I do? I'll give anything, money, land, anything." The prophet shook his head. "It is not money they want. They want Dora, or you. But she carries something greater now. She cannot be touched. But you are naked." Back in the mansion, Udoka's condition worsened. He hadn't eaten in days. His eyes were sunken, and his skin had taken on a grayish hue. Zina tried to feed him, to bathe him, to call a doctor, but every time help arrived, their devices would malfunction. Phones died. Cars refused to start. Even the generator stopped working, though it was brand new. One nurse whispered, "This house is under something. We can't help." And they left. That night, Zina walked through the corridor and saw something that made her drop to her knees. All the family portraits, pictures of her and Udoka, of their wedding, their vacations, had changed. In every frame, Zina's face had been replaced by Dora's. Desperate, Zina drove to a spiritualist outside town, someone her late father once warned her never to visit. The woman, a gaunt figure draped in black, lived deep in the swampy outskirts of Ipe. Her shrine smelled of rot and wet stone. She didn't smile. "I know why you've come," the woman said, "and I know who walks with you." Zina fell to her knees. Please, please help me. They're going to kill me. No, the woman said. They won't kill you. Zina looked up, hopeful. They'll take you, and what comes back won't be you. She gasped. No, there must be a way. The woman paused. Only one thing can balance a broken vow. What is it? Zina whispered. The woman leaned in. Return to where it began. Find the child. Beg for her forgiveness, and don't lie. Zina nodded eagerly. I'll go. I'll find her. But the woman stopped her. You have 1 day left. As she drove back to Lagos that evening, the clouds darkened. Rain pounded her windshield. The road twisted strangely. One moment she was on the expressway, the next, surrounded by thick, dark trees. She slammed the brakes. She wasn't in Lagos anymore. She stepped out, confused. And there, ahead of her, standing barefoot in the middle of the wet road, Dora. Older now, maybe 8, maybe 10. Her eyes locked with Zina's. She didn't speak. Zina fell to her knees in the mud, sobbing. Please, Dora. I didn't mean to leave you. I didn't know. I was scared. Dora blinked slowly. You said I was bad luck. Zina sobbed harder. I was wrong. I was wrong. Dora took a step forward, then another, until she stood right before Zina. She reached out her hand, and just before touching Zina's forehead, she whispered, 1 day left, Mama. And then, we begin. Zina collapsed the moment Dora touched her forehead. She didn't faint. She froze, paralyzed, eyes wide open, mouth trembling. Visions flooded her mind, flashes of the blood vow by the river, her broken promise, the spirits watching Dora since birth, waiting for this very moment. Then everything went black. Back in the village, word spread fast. Mama Nkechi was dead. She died holding Dora's hand, whispering, Don't follow the spirits too far. Stay in the light. But Dora said nothing. She just closed the old woman's eyes and stepped outside. That night, the wind in Umuezike shifted. Animals howled. Shadows stretched. No one slept. The villagers were terrified of Dora now. She walked barefoot through the market, and stalls collapsed behind her. The rain obeyed her voice. Children cried in her presence. Men turned their faces. Some called her a spirit. Others called her a curse. But Dora was preparing for something bigger. She had seen her mother's face in a dream again, crying, begging, surrounded by smoke. The voice in the dream whispered, Go. Your time has come. So Dora packed her bag, a stone with ancient carvings, a photograph of her mother, and her grandmother's scarf. Then, before dawn, she walked out of the village without saying goodbye. As she left, 3 owls flew above her, circling. Far away in Lagos, Zina felt it. She woke up breathless. The room was ice cold. Her husband hadn't moved in days, just rocking in his chair, mumbling, She's near. Zina ran to the door, opened it. Nothing, but the floor was wet with muddy footprints, small, barefoot, heading straight for her room. Zina locked every door, every window. But it was too late. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the lights went out. A soft voice echoed from the hallway. Mama! Zina froze. She turned, and Dora was standing there barefoot, older, eyes glowing faintly. Zina fell to her knees, crying. Please, forgive me. I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared. Dora stepped forward. You broke the vow. I was never the curse. I was your protection. I'll do anything, Zina begged. Take my life. Spare me the torment. Dora looked into her mother's eyes. They don't want your life. They want your place. The shadows closed in. Zina screamed, and then silence. By morning, the mansion was empty. Zina was gone, no trace. Chief Udoka recovered, but he never spoke again. Back in Umuezike, Dora returned. The villagers watched from afar as she walked into Mama Nkechi's house and lit a single candle. She sat under the mango tree, her mother's scarf around her shoulders. A little girl asked, "Is your mama gone?" Dora smiled softly. She's where she belongs. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment.